There is a kind of silence that is not just the absence of sound. You've tasted it before, though you may not have noticed. It's there in the pause between heartbeats, when you're waiting for news that could change everything. It's there in the quiet at 3 a.m., when the world has gone dark and your thoughts are suddenly louder than the city ever was. It's there in the glance between two people who understand each other so deeply that speech would only cheapen what is already known. We live our lives surrounded by words. We talk, we type, we argue, we define, we explain. But have you noticed that the deepest truths you've ever felt did not arrive as sentences? They arrived as silence. Silence says what words never could, the sound beneath all sounds. If you sit quietly for a moment, really quietly, you'll notice something curious. At first, you hear the obvious: distant traffic, a dog barking, the hum of an air conditioner, the faint murmur of voices leaking through a wall. Then, as you settle, subtler sounds appear. Your breathing, the soft rustle of clothes as your chest rises and falls, the quiet crackle of the room itself. But if you go even deeper, you'll sense something underneath all of that, a kind of vast, open stillness in which all sounds come and go. That stillness was there before the noise started. It remains while the noise happens, and it is there after the noise fades away. Silence isn't the enemy of sound. Silence is the space that allows sound to exist. Every note in a song depends on the silence around it. Every word in this sentence is stitched into the fabric of quiet. The mind is obsessed with the notes, the words, the events. But wisdom lives in the silence that holds them all. We think we are shaped by what we hear and say, but often we are shaped far more by what we never say, and by the spaces between our words. Why we fear silence. Most people are afraid of silence, not the polite kind, not the turn down the music for a moment kind, but the real silence that comes when nothing is distracting you from yourself. Have you noticed how quickly we reach for our phones the moment a conversation slows? Or how easily we flip on the TV just to keep the room from feeling empty? We claim we want peace, but we also fill every gap with noise. Why? Because true silence is not empty. It shows you everything that's been waiting underneath. In silence, you meet your own mind without its disguises. You hear your fears, your regrets, your unspoken questions, your unprocessed grief. You also hear your longing for meaning, for love, for something real in a world that seems constantly distracted. Silence doesn't create these things. It reveals them. And that is why it can feel uncomfortable, even threatening. The ego, that restless storyteller inside you, lives on noise, opinions, arguments, explanations, labels. Silence exposes the ego's limits. It strips away the safety of chatter. It reminds you that beneath all your thoughts, there is something you cannot name and cannot control. But that something is precisely where your freedom lives, the background of awareness. Sit with me, just for a moment, wherever you are. You may be in a noisy room, a quiet house, a busy street. It doesn't matter. Close your eyes, if you can, and listen. Sounds arise. Footsteps, cars, voices, birds, or maybe just the subtle hum of your own breathing. Notice how each sound appears, stays for a brief moment, and then fades. Now ask yourself, what is it that knows these sounds? What is it that is aware of their coming and going? That awareness does not speak. It does not shout its presence. It does not argue. It is silent, and yet it contains everything. This is the silence that says what words never could. Words can describe a sunset. Silence lets you feel it. Words can talk about love. Silence lets you sink into it. Words can define death. Silence brings you face to face with the mystery of it. Understanding in the Stoic sense is not merely intellectual, it is experiential. It's not enough to think about wisdom. You must sit quietly enough to hear it speak, and it rarely speaks in words. When silence speaks in relationships, think of someone you love deeply. Do you remember the most meaningful moment you shared? It might not be a conversation. Quite often, it's a quiet moment, sitting side by side, watching the sky, holding a hand. A moment when nothing had to be said, because nothing was missing. In those moments, silence is not awkward, it's sacred. What you feel there is not the absence of communication, it is communication at its highest form. The Stoic understands that words are tools, useful but limited. You can tell someone, "I love you," 1,000 times and still never reach them. But one look, one quiet act of presence, one moment of fully being with them, without distraction, without agenda, can speak louder than any declaration. Why? Because true connection happens not between mouths, but between inner worlds. Silence allows those worlds to touch without the interference of noise. It's the same with conflict. Most arguments are just two egos trying to shout louder than the other. In silence, you begin to listen instead of preparing your next defense. And in listening, you sometimes hear something unexpected. Not an enemy to defeat, but a human being who is just as confused, just as afraid, just as vulnerable as you. Silence doesn't mean you never speak. It means that when you do, your words are rooted in something deeper than reaction. Silence and the ego's need to prove. The reason we talk so much, out loud and in our heads, is that we are constantly trying to prove something. I am right. I am important. I am hurt. I am special. I am justified. The ego does not know how to simply be. It only knows how to perform. It fills the air with commentary, judgments, worries, fantasies. It narrates your life as though it were the main character in a story that must always be winning. Silence threatens that story. When you become truly quiet, inside, not just outside, you notice that the ego isn't the one listening. Something far more spacious is. The Stoic way is not to crush the ego through force, but to outgrow it through understanding. Silence is the classroom where that understanding begins. In silence, you see that your thoughts are not commands. They are weather. They come and go across the sky of awareness. If you stop engaging every cloud, you realize the sky was there all along, clear, open, wide. This is why silence is powerful. It shows you that you are not the voice arguing in your head. You are the quiet in which that voice appears. Silence as surrender. There are times in life when words fail completely. When you stand at a grave. When you watch someone you love walk away. When you receive news that splits your reality in two. In those moments, what can words do? You can try to explain, justify, rationalize, but somewhere inside you know, no sentence can reach this depth. There, silence is not an option. It is the only honest response. You sit with the pain. You breathe. You let tears come without commentary. In that naked, vulnerable quiet, something profound happens. You stop trying to control the moment. You stop trying to make it make sense. You surrender, not in defeat, but in humility. You admit that there are things far larger than your understanding. You bow, internally, to what is. That bow, that inward gesture of, yes, this is happening, is a kind of silent prayer. It is also the beginning of peace. Because as long as you fight reality with words, this shouldn't be happening. This can't be true. This isn't fair. You are at war with what already is. Silence lays down the weapons. It whispers, I don't understand, but I am willing to be here. And in that willingness, you often find that the pain does not consume you. It moves through you, the way a storm moves across the sky. Silence lets it move. Noise keeps it circling. Silence and time. We live trapped in the noise of time, memories of the past, anxieties about the future. The mind talks endlessly about then and later, but rarely sits in now. Silence is always now. When you become truly quiet, you stop negotiating with time. You are no longer replaying yesterday or rehearsing tomorrow. You simply are. Breathing, listening, witnessing. In that simplicity, time loosens its grip. A minute can feel like an eternity. An hour can vanish like a breath. You realize that your suffering was rarely about what was actually happening. It was about the story you were telling yourself about what should have happened instead. Silence drops the story. For a moment, there is just this: the feel of air in your lungs, the weight of your body on the chair, the faint sounds of life happening around you. Nothing missing, nothing extra. In this state, you touch something beyond time, a stillness that does not age. Even as the clock ticks, there is a part of you that remains untouched, quietly watching. That part is closest to truth, and it speaks in silence. Silence as inner alignment. The Stoic life is not about suppressing emotion or pretending nothing hurts. It is about aligning yourself with the nature of things, seeing clearly, acting wisely, and accepting what you cannot change. Silence is one of the purest ways to feel that alignment. When you sit quietly and listen, you begin to sense the difference between inner resistance and inner agreement. Resistance feels noisy, even if you say nothing. Your chest tightens, your thoughts spin. You rehearse arguments with reality. Agreement or acceptance feels like silence inside, not the dead silence of apathy, but the living silence of yes. Yes, this is what is happening. Yes, I may not like it, but it is here. Yes, I will respond from clarity, not panic. From that silence, your actions become cleaner. You no longer react like a cornered animal. You respond like someone who knows they are part of something larger than their own preference. Silence does not make you passive, it makes you precise. When the noise settles, you see what actually needs to be done. And often, it is far simpler than you imagined. The mirror of silence. Try an experiment with yourself. Next time you are hurt, instead of immediately explaining why, defending yourself, or blaming someone else, pause. Go somewhere quiet, even if it's just the inside of your own breath. Sit and let the emotion rise without narrating it. No, they always. No, I never. No, this means. Just raw feeling. Sensation in the body. The energy of hurt, without the story. If you stay there, if you don't flee back into thoughts, you may notice something surprising. The emotion moves on its own. It changes shape. It softens. It sometimes reveals a deeper layer. A fear, a grief, a longing. Silence acts like a mirror. It reflects your inner world without commentary. Most people avoid that mirror because they are afraid of what they'll see. But only what is seen can be understood, and only what is understood can be released. The Stoic is not afraid to sit in front of that mirror. He knows that discomfort in silence is the price of authenticity. He would rather face the truth quietly than live comfortably in noise. The silent answer. There are questions in your life right now that no one can answer for you. Should you leave or stay? Forgive or walk away? Rest or push forward? Speak or remain silent? You can ask 100 people, read 100 books, watch 100 videos, and still feel uncertain. Because some answers do not come from outside. They arise from a place in you that cannot be rushed, cannot be coerced, cannot be argued into clarity. That place speaks in silence. If you give it time, if you stop drowning it with opinions, it will move, like a needle settling north on a compass. You might feel it as a subtle yes, a gentle pull, a relaxation in your chest when you imagine one path and not the other. No fireworks, no dramatic revelation, just a quiet knowing. This is the way. The Stoic trusts that knowing, not blindly, but with respect. He sees that wisdom does not shout, only insecurity does. Real guidance comes like a whisper inside a wide, deep silence. The closing meditation, listening to the quiet. Now, let this become not just words, but an experience. Wherever you are, if it's safe to do so, close your eyes. Take a slow breath in and out. Let the shoulders drop. Let the jaw loosen. Let the hands rest. You don't need to fix anything right now. You don't need to solve your whole life in this moment. Just listen. Notice the sounds around you. Do not label them. Do not judge them. Just let them appear and disappear on their own. Now notice the space between those sounds, the gaps, the stillness that holds everything. That stillness is also inside you. It has always been there, underneath the worry, underneath the planning, underneath the commentary. You don't have to create it. You only have to notice it. Let the next thought come if it wants to. Watch it like a wave, and then watch it fade. Between one thought and the next, there is silence. Rest there, even if only for a heartbeat. This silence is not empty. It is full of presence, of awareness, of a quiet sense that you are okay, even if nothing outside has changed yet. This is where wisdom lives. This is what speaks when words fall short. You can return here any time, in the middle of an argument, in the rush of the day, in the depths of doubt. Just one breath, one pause, one conscious step back into the quiet, and ask, without words, what is true right now? What needs to be done, if anything? What can I let go of? You may not hear an answer in language, but you will feel it in how your body softens, in how your mind clears, in how the next step suddenly feels a little lighter. Silence says what words never could. Words point. Silence reveals. Words explain. Silence lets you understand. Words can divide. Silence reminds you that you were never truly separate from others, from nature, from the great unfolding that carries all things. So live in such a way that you are not afraid of the quiet. Let there be moments in your day when no music plays, no notifications buzz, no voices speak, not even your own. Sit, stand, walk, but do it in awareness. Let silence wash over you like light, and you will discover, gentle, unforced, that what you were desperately seeking in noise, in words, in arguments, was waiting patiently for you in the quiet all along. Listen. The deepest part of you has been speaking in silence your whole life. Now, at last, you are ready to hear.